Hey everyone, and welcome to 1.21 Gigawatts. I am Peter, that is Matt, and we talk about movies on this show. And on this episode, we are talking about a movie that's based on a comic book, which isn't actually that weird for us, given that we'll usually do all the new DC and Marvel movies. But this is a little bit different. This is based on a comic book called I Killed Giants, which is an indie comic book, and is a little bit different from your usual fare. So we're going to do about that. We're going to start spoiler free. We'll give you a warning somewhere in the middle before we go into spoilers, and that's what we're going to do. So yeah, what is I Killed Giants? I Killed Giants is a story about a young girl named Barbara who believes that she protects her small town in Rhode Island from monsters, from giants. And she sets up traps, she has all this mythology worked out, and everyone else thinks she's a little bit crazy. Other kids at school, her big sister, her brother, her one kind of new friend who tries to befriend her even though she's kind of weird, but kind of goes along with it anyway. And that's kind of the setup of the movie. And I think the intention, even from the trailer, is very much, is this giant stuff real, or is it all a metaphor for something that she's going through? I think I'll leave it there, because I think from the trailer you get that question. I actually think the movie makes it quite clear relatively early which way it's going with it, but from the trailer that's the question that I went in with, because this is actually why we're doing this, is I really like the trailer. Me and Connor did the trailer a few weeks ago, or actually probably a couple of months ago now, on the movie news, and it spoke to me. Something about the trailer spoke to me, and I wanted to see it, so I talked Matt into doing an episode on it. So
it's about a girl with a giant hammer that fights giants, and I was like,
that's a cool poster, Matt. That poster where she's got her back to the cameras that were with the big hammer.
And I was like, sign me up.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll ask the question. So that's the premise. Matt, did you enjoy I Killed Giants?
I did. This was a movie that spoke right to my soul as someone that grew up very angry with a lot of problems in need of an outlet. I felt like, what's the word I'm looking for? A kinship, I guess, with young Barbara. Granted, I wasn't as detached.
Oh,
as
sure.
her.
I'm also sure you weren't setting up traps around your town for potential giants.
No, but, around the house, maybe leaving stuff here and there, and then Dad stepping on it and getting super pissed, but... no, it wasn't so much traps as me just being lazy and not picking things up. But no, yeah, this movie, I watched the trailer, when you proposed it, and when I agreed, I didn't realize how much it was going to affect me until about halfway through, and then I was solidly in.
I think what's impressive about it is there's something that. Early on, we'll save this for spoilers, but early on I guessed what the movie was about.
Yeah.
And I think even though I was kind of right, it still managed to swerve me a little bit when it finally got to, revealing everything, and I'm like, oh, okay, alright, very smart.
Yep.
So I credit that. I think the performance is great. We have, obviously, young Madison Wolfe, who's playing Barbara. She's very good. Her and our new friend, Sophia, played by Cindy Wade, who... I knew her face from something. I looked up her IMDb page. She was in an episode of Sherlock, so I assume that's where I'm recognising her face from. But she's like a new girl who's just moved from England, so she's like, oh, I'm kind of, everyone thinks I'm weird, can I talk funny, and can I talk to you? So she's kind of the friend. Our big sister. I like
how she's like, they don't know Leeds, but they know
London. Yeah.
So
people in Rhode Island only know London, yeah.
Yeah, and so but I don't know where Leeds is at, so I had to look that up real quick as I'm watching the movie, and oh yeah, that's like saying Orlando and New York City. They're completely different parts of the country. So I thought that really landed.
So the big sister's Imogen Poots, who, funnily enough, is English as well, but is doing an American accent as her big sister. And she's there. Do you know, she's not actually got a huge role. She's an important part of the story, but she's not got that much screen time. So it was actually kind of funny when it got to the end credits and her name came up first. I'm like, oh, that's the star power right there. She's got her name up first.
Yeah, that's the name.
Screw the kids. And obviously Zoe Saldana, who I'd argue is probably the bigger name, but she gets the coveted and credit. She's the and Zoe Saldana at the end. She plays the school counsellor, or the shrink, as the kids refer to her as. Which is funny.
Yeah, she's the school psychologist more than a count. She's, she's a legit therapist.
That's fair. I mean, my school never had a therapist. We had counsellors. But yeah.
Also, as I've worked around schools for a very long time. when you say counselor, my shorthand is like a guidance counselor who kind
Yeah.
of helps, help you kind of figure out what's going on, and they're there to talk. Versus the psychologist, where she is a therapist, like she works with the kids that are having a harder time. But yeah, she's, you know, I like how they used her as the school psychologist instead of like trying to force her to go into like therapy and whatnot. It really was organic, and I thought Saldana did really well with what she was given. Like she's very compassionate.
Yeah, oh, I'm so used to Saldana being a badass in some way. Well, it's
Hmm.
Guardians of the Galaxy or Star Trek or even Avatar. Like, she's always an action
Yeah.
hero of some kind. It was actually kind of weird seeing her in a more normal, like realistic role where she's I have a job and I have a family and I've got a baby. And I'm like, oh, this is
I
weird.
expected her to be like, yeah, I fight giants too, and she pulls out a sword.
Yeah, you're expecting her to like
Got a
dual
giant.
wield with with young Barbara at some point. But so cast are very good. It's very inventive. Obviously, whenever we do get into the giant stuff, the visuals start get really interesting because it actually treats it like. I mean, there's like a flashback at one point when she's explaining the mythology of the giants, which is very
Yeah.
stylized and cartoony and fake looking. But when the giants actually, when she's like hunting a giant in the forest or we see one coming, it tends to look pretty good. It's not like a huge budget movie, so it's not like
Yeah, it's
mega
more the
level, but
it's more the atmosphere of the
yeah,
creature being there. Like most of the time, it's in shadows and whatnot, but you get the feeling of the sense of dread. Like she says, you learn to look for the signs, and like that's like birds flying away. So anytime these birds, fly away, that's there's a giant close.
yeah. There's some great stuff with her like running away from one in the forest, and you just see the shape of it in the distance through the fog, and
Yep.
it's got that kind of atmosphere to it. And then, of course, the big thing as well is because a lot of this is like, as much as we're describing this giant stuff, it's not like an action movie. There is a lot of it is the drama of what she's going through, what is and the fact that she does need a therapist, and the fact that she is having troubles and having outbursts and everything else, and she's very antisocial.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy to relate to her. I don't know if I'd quite go as far to say that, to say I was an angry kid, but I think just
Yeah.
as someone who, if this is a delusion, if this is her escaping into her own imagination because stuff's like too much to take, I think there's an element of that any like nerd who grew up on pop
Hmm.
culture can kind of relate to in some way. I mean,
Yeah.
most of us never go this far, but
Early on, where she, her brother's playing like Call of Duty, whatever aggro first person shooter he's playing.
I think it was
And
Killzone, but I'm not
oh,
super
whatever, they're
sure.
all the same
But
to me. You
yeah,
kids and your video games, but she has a Dungeons and Dragons type game set up, a role playing, and she rolls the dice and goes and unplugs his game, and I died because the way that she'd said it was like, oh yeah, she's definitely a nerd. 'Cause she's
oh yeah,
like, yep, I
she
cast
said
a
something
blackout
like,
spell.
I did a saving throw and it failed,
Yep.
so there you go. TV's unplugged. Uh,
And
but do you know what the funny thing about that scene is that he was being a complete dick, but at the same time,
yep,
as someone who does play games, not these types of games specifically, but as someone who plays games, if anyone ever unplugged when I was about to achieve
yep.
something in the game that I'd be working towards, oh,
Oh yeah,
oh,
yeah.
she would
Well, she
fear for
doesn't
her
do it
life.
because like, yeah, dinner's ready and whatnot, but like she could have waited, but she does it just to be an antagonist, and
Oh yeah,
that's
yeah,
her
yeah.
personality. And I love that where she's like, "Yep, that was the saving throw and it failed, so blackout spell consumed your game," and then she just leaves it like that, and then makes her sister basically deal with the brunt of it,
Hmm.
and that's her detachment from everything. Is again, I might relate to this more than I should, but like letting other people deal with the consequences of something that you've done just because you're just like, yeah, I'm not dealing with it, and you just leave. So, but yeah, this girl, I was just like, oh man, if I ever have kids and they're like this, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
um, I don't know, jail time probably. So I think all the relationships with Barbara are actually really strong. I think there's not a single one that I saw as being weak or as less interesting. Like, I think whenever she's interacting with Sophia and Sophia's trying to befriend her, it's interesting. It's kind of sweet. When she's interacting with her sister's struggling. She's trying to be the adult, even though she's kind of it's been thrust upon her. I mean, she's in her 20s. She's old enough that she's
Yeah.
got a job and stuff, but it's been thrust upon her when maybe before she's ready to like take care of two kids,
Yeah.
and she's like struggling. So that's like there's an interesting thing where she's frustrated, but she's trying to be like motherly, and it's just kind of going back and forth. And then of course
Yeah.
Saldana's got the sweet therapist sort of stuff going, and all of that kind of works really well. And I think it's a testament, and I think it's why the movie works so well, is that you're not sitting around waiting, oh, when's the next giant stuff happening?
Mm-mm.
You're actually invested in the drama of it. Because it's very simple high school stuff. There's a kid that kind of bullies her a little bit, but of course she's
Kind of full on.
well, sure, but I mean,
Yeah.
the point I'm making is that Barbara, unlike say other like movie characters who would take it and it would be this miserable experience, always fights back in some way.
Yeah.
Even if it's not,
And it always makes it worse.
yeah, it may not be
because-
literally punching back necessarily, but there's always like something that okay, you're actually you're enraging the beast, you're poking the
Right.
bear.
And I mean, it was all set up through the violence. Like, why is she afraid of a bully when she fights giants? You know, like this giant's this bully is small potatoes compared to the giant, right? So I like that was her attitude in dealing with that, and she doesn't know when to stop. Because there's a scene where the bullies get the jump on her, and you were just like, all right, just stop, and she doesn't.
Yeah, no,
and
it just keeps going.
I kind of admire that about her, but and it doesn't end up well.
Yeah, I think what I like about her character as well is that she's obviously very flawed, but there's a very endearing kind of like you want her to succeed even when she is doing something that maybe she shouldn't be doing, or you can see why this is a problem that she's doing this, but part of that childlike wonder of like, no, just do it, get away with it, go on, break the rule. So I think it takes you back to being a kid in a lot of ways, a lot of times. So yeah, visuals very good. I think it's pretty well directed. Like I say, the cast is very good, and all the rest of it. So I think with that, we'll probably give the spoiler warning so we can start talking about spoilers. So full spoilers for I Kill Giants from henceforth. So right away, right as the movie's like kicking off and we're seeing the dinner scene with a D&D, switching off the TV. It's like, okay, the sister's looking after the other two. So immediately my mind goes to, okay, this is all about dealing with the fact that our parents are dead in some way.
Yep.
Right? That's what your mind immediately goes to. And the sister's struggling, and the movie plays out like that for a long, long time. And I actually, when I mentioned earlier on that I was kind of impressed that it still managed to surprise me, because throughout the movie we see that, like, it's almost like Kill Bill whenever someone says mother to her, because it goes a long time with no one mentioning like the parents, where they are, but you just sort of like they're noticeable by their absence. And obviously there's a big scene in the middle where Saldana in therapy says mother, it mutes her saying it. It does that sort of thing where Barbara sort of zoning everything out. Yeah. And she smacks her in the face, which is a big moment because she just hit a teacher essentially. Although, of course, she points out later, well, technically I didn't hit a teacher, I hit the school therapist, because that's better.
Exactly. So while she's a staff member, it's not exactly the same thing.
Yeah. And the only reason why she's not expelled is because Saldana sort of she phones her sister and tells her about it, because her sister's pissed at her for it, but she doesn't go to the principal with it. She just tells her sister, it's like, you get one mistake like that. And it's it's just like, because that's the thing, you really grow to like Saldana because she's trying her best. She's trying to give her all the chances possible to not screw up her childhood.
Yeah, well, because she knows that there's something up with her, and my sister-in-law is a therapist, and some of the stories that she has of trying to break through to people, those walls go up, and you can't break through sometimes. So, the fact that right there is all Saldana figures out that, well, here's the the weak point.
Yeah.
In helping her, and through that moment where she slaps her, that okay, now I know what to work on with her, and the relationship gets a little bit better.
And I think despite all the stuff that's going on in the movie with the giants and stuff, it's so down to earth in every other way that when she does hit her, you feel an uncomfortable, like, oh damn, that that's a moment that doesn't happen. You're not supposed to do that, so it feels really uncomfortable for everyone involved. So when she runs out the room after doing it, like you feel the unease of the event that just happened.
But, it's like oh man, she messed up royally. What's going to happen to her now?
So so the swerve I was talking about though is that eventually she stops going to school for a couple of days, and Sophia gets concerned, goes and like gets Saldana, tells her, and they go looking for her, and she finds her in Saldana. This is the first time we actually hear the word mother in the movie, because it's been muted up until this point.
Yep.
She says, "Your mother wants to see you," and I went, "Damn, she's not dead yet."
Yep.
Like, because obviously the whole thing's about losing her mother, but it never occurred to me that she might actually not be dead yet, because there's actually a moment earlier on, it's after she gets beaten up by the bullies and Sophia takes her home, where Sophia sees something in her room upstairs, and she mentions that we never, Barbara's like, we never go upstairs.
We don't go upstairs.
And I'm like, why not? What's upstairs? And I'm like, what did she see in that room? Because Sophia drops the glass and smashes it, and she runs away kind of scared. I'm like, what did she see?
Yeah.
And if I'm thinking everything Barbara's seeing is fake, then what did what did Sophia see that scared her? And it turns out her mother's on her deathbed, like she's been sick for a while and she's up there.
Yeah.
And all of this that's going on, this Giants thing, is all about her not being able to accept. Because right early on, like, there's a moment after the fight at the dinner table scene where she comes back in the house and she hears her sister and brother upstairs like talking about her, and like they're saying, "Oh, you have to give her a chance," to the brother, and like, it's like, "Yeah, but why? Sure, she's weird," and they're just talking about how to deal with her. And it's basically during this where like the first signs of a giant attack start happening. She hears something, and right away I was like, it's interesting that as soon as like the emotional problems that she's not dealing with, the stuff that she's wanting to ignore, that's when the magical threat of the giant starts to manifest. Like, it seemed to be whenever there was like a real problem she didn't want to deal with, that's when, oh shit, there's a sign of a giant, or she hears a giant, or something to that effect. So ultimately what the movie's about is it's her with this fantasy to feel like she can save the day, to feel like she has power, to feel like, I'm this badass giant slayer, I can do this. Because she can't beat death. She can't beat her mother's cancer or whatever her mother's got.
And what's the? She's struggling for meaning and to like, what does this whole world mean, and how can I not relevance. I'm having a hard time saying that. Relevance. That's what she's struggling to find, and so I also thought that the giants represented her anger, especially the one at the end that comes in, because in that segment that she talks about all the different kinds, like you have frost giants and storm giants, and you have these harbingers, and who are kind of like Dementors from Harry Potter. Yeah,
because they came up and actually speak to her and like, oh, why haven't you killed the giants yet? They're kind of like her self-doubt almost.
Yeah, exactly. But then you have the one that she talks about, the Titans, like the big, we're talking the Greek mythology, they make your blood boil. And I heard that, and I was like, oh, okay. And then as she's dealing with what she has to at the end and what that Titan represents, and it's anger at the mother for being sick and, basically leaving her there, and just, it destroyed me. We got to that point.
Because her magical hammer, which she claims she has in this little pocket pouch thing.
Kovaleski.
Yeah, Kovaleski. She's like, it's called Kovaleski, and no one knows what that is. And it's not until Sophia mentions, she's a baseball fan, and the gym teacher notices, oh, Kovaleski, that's a deep cut. He's not played baseball in 100 years. That's old. If you got a fan, so you realise at this point, okay, so baseball's related to whoever she's losing. So I was thinking her dad at that point, just because typically sports go with the dad, but whatever. It's the mother, and it's like, okay, so how does this relate? And it's not until Sophia kind of like, when she's in the house and like the others are like talking about her or whatever, she goes down into a little den in the basement where she's been staying because she doesn't want to go upstairs. She sees all her photos, and we've heard Barbara listen to the old radio recordings of the old games, and she hears the on the tape, it's both her and her mother talking about how Kovaleski was called the Giant Killer because he did so well against the New York Giants. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's where the title comes. That's why she has this specific delusion.
Yeah, when I put that all together, right, because we all know that I love Thor and Viking stuff, and she talks about how a named weapon has to earn its keep, and it's the stuff of legend for a reason.
Oh yeah, and just like Mjolnir, it's like it's not a dying star, but it's formed out of the jaw of the Titan being that created all giants.
Ymir. Yeah. So, well, it gets into some Norse mythology too, because Ymir was the first giant, and she talks about how the earth and the sky came together, and then when Ymir was lonely, he created the giants out of his own blood, and all of this. And that's how I was like, oh man, this is great. Like, this is really hitting my groove. And then she starts talking about this hammer and how she can only bring it out when it's time to kill giants, right?
Yeah, because
And
there's a time when she's being bullied earlier on and on the
yeah,
beach. This is after, like, her and Sophia have kind of fallen out, and Sophia has been kind of like coerced by the bullies to tell them about some of her
yep,
traps, and they're off destroying it. And she comes up and confronts them on the beach. And Barbara opens a little bag, and she pulls out this little like makeshift stick hammer thing she's built, and it's
yep,
like really pathetic looking. And she's like, "Oh
yep,
no, it's lost its power. Why has it lost its power?" And then the bullies beat her up. Well, this is the point in the movie where the bullies just
yeah,
kick the shit out of her. And it's towards the end. It's once like Sophia's with her again. They're on the beach. There's a storm coming, and the radio mentioned there might be a storm, but there's it's just not
yeah,
that dangerous, right? And I guess the movie's kind of playing it a lot because even though it's very clearly all in her head, it's kind of just
yeah,
doing enough that if you want to believe that there's some truth to any of this, because no one else ever
yeah.
sees anything from a giant. Like Sophia sees
No,
the fire after she kills that one in the middle at the train dock,
yeah,
the train yard, where
right,
where she used the electricity.
uh-huh.
And she leaves like, all the train cars just on fire, and I'm like, yeah, you're going to go to prison for arson if anyone comes and
Yeah, if
sees
anyone
this.
ever talks about this. And I kind of like looking through Sophia's eyes too, because we're experiencing this as her. She's our eyes,
Yeah,
because she knows her about as well as we do. So, but yeah, when it got to the reveal of who Kovaleski was, I couldn't take it anymore. So I typed his name into Wikipedia, and I read, and I told my wife who was watching with me, I was like, oh, he was known as the Giant Killer because she's a Dodger fan, and there's a Giants Dodgers rivalry, and uh, so she finds out that this is the Giant Killer and whatnot, and my wife even smiles. She's like, "Oh, that's really cool." So that's how it all ties together, and I just, oh man, so good. And then I look up who wrote it, and it's Joe Kelly, who's
yeah.
he's done comic book work, and he's written some of my favorite stuff of
Yeah,
Superman
it's worth mentioning. He wrote the comic book, but he's also wrote the script
and
for the movie, so he
screenplay.
he adapted it as
Yeah.
well. So yeah,
So it's hitting all these stuff that I really love, whether it's the Viking stuff and her having a hammer but feeling not worthy, to insignificance and how she deals with it. And then the stuff with the mom happens at the end, and for people that don't know, I lost my mom back in August, so there were scenes where she goes to see her mom, and I had to pause it and I broke down. And there's nothing worse than having your wife come and go, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, just leave me alone. Where's my hammer? I need to beat something."
yeah. It's so good because she gets her hammer back just after because Sophia's there on the beach and she's like, "Go and hide." And then she pulls out a hammer, and you see that it's the one in the poster, this big giant hammer. It's got
Yep.
this electricity kind of like it's almost got like a Tesla coil, like
Yeah, it's very steampunk,
yeah.
like, yeah,
And she does this big giant jump, and because we've seen like the water do this sort of like, as if something's under the water a few times in
yeah,
the movie, and it's during this storm where it actually comes out as a titan, and she does this jump and like just hammers the ground, and this bolt of lightning comes down. It's this big over the top. It's very visual,
yep,
very representative. She's fighting her like she's finally dealing with her fears, and
yep. She's facing him.
yeah, and she ends up in the water actually. Again, kind of implying that all she really did is maybe walk out into the water and almost drown, but she makes the choice to come back. And because at the end of the movie, because we actually, after she comes home and she goes and sees her mother, and they embrace, we jump ahead till after the summer, and we see that she's a little bit better. She's not dressing as weird. She's kind of normal. She's got a Dodgers jacket on, I think, and they go to her mum's funeral, and it's this kind of sad thing. We see she's still friends with Sophia. And at the end of the movie, she's upstairs and she goes into her mum's room and she looks out the window and the Titan's in the water, and she just kind of says, "Hey, thanks." Like,
Yeah.
I can take care of myself now.
It reminds me of Banner and Hulk at the end of Avengers, where he goes, "That's the secret. I'm always angry," and that was her, just like, yeah, sometimes.
The Thor comparisons aren't enough. You have to bring Hulk into it as well.
Sorry, it's just who I am. But like, her last name's Thorson, for Christ's sakes. Like, how am I supposed to not to? But it was just like, yeah, sometimes it's okay to be angry, but you can't
Shit,
be
you're
driven.
right. Thorson. God damn it.
You can't be driven by your anger. Like, you have to let it, yeah, be angry, yell and scream, but you have to be able to face your,
Fears,
whatever's bothering you.
it's about accepting. It's about facing your fears. It's about coping all these things.
Maybe I read into it too much and how it applies to me.
I think the big thing for me was just the general feeling of she feels weak, she feels vulnerable because she can't save her mother, so she's created this reality where she is this awful, this great champion who can take down giants. Like, she feels that she can achieve something. She's protecting people by doing that, and that speaks to me. I think the idea of like escaping like that, and like I feel powerful here because I don't feel powerful in the real world.
Well, yeah, that's video games, it's comic books, it allows you to go into that world. It's Dungeons and Dragons, where you get to be like a 20th level barbarian or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, because that's what I'm saying. I think, honestly, the movie, the trailer kind of played it as if it could be real, but honestly, the movie itself, I think right at the start from the movie, that D&D scene where she says, hey, why don't you come and play a real game and use your imagination, I think that's spelling it out for you. She's using her imagination the entire time.
Yeah.
So...
Definitely. Well, and it definitely made me want to go and find the comic, because I know it's been collected, because it's been out for a while now, and I want to see how different it is, because you can play with that. Is it real? Is it not? Differently in the pages of a comic versus in a movie, So, and then what beats it hits, because when you have the guy that wrote the comic also do the screenplay, you assume it's going to be pretty faithful.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because I think it's a very tightly scripted movie. I don't think there's a lot of problems with the script. So I wonder, like, is he just very good at adapting and knowing what works in the different formats, and because of that, it would probably be quite interesting to see what is different, what did change, what was taken out, what was added, that kind of thing. I think it's very neat though. I love that you don't even get like a sense, as much as it's about her losing her mother. I love that we are halfway through the movie before that first time where she says, in the therapy session where she says mother and it mutes it. But in that time, you can't actually tell what she says. Like, I assume she said mother or father, right? I assume she said that.
Yeah, or parents.
You can't actually tell what she said. It's not until when she's talking to Sophia later on where she's like ran off and she's at the D&D, the role-playing shop, and she comes in to talk to her, and Sophia flat out says, why didn't you tell me about your mother? And it mutes at that time, but that time you can tell what she said.
Yeah.
Right? But that's after she found the photo and she found all the stuff in the basement that told you about all the... Because she finds a receipt in there for this shop, which is why she goes there to look for her.
That's why she goes there, yeah.
But that's a good hour into the movie. I actually love that the first 45 to an hour, they're just absent. No one ever mentions it. You just see the sister taking care of them, and you get the sense that she's stepping up because the parents aren't around. Like, she is being thrust into this role, not by choice, and you just get it.
Yeah, it reminded me of Lilo and Stitch, because when that movie kicks off, you see that there's this little girl that, she's eccentric and she has her issues, and then when you find out that it's her older sister raising her, and the whole subplot of that is that the government's checking in on her to making sure she's actually taking care of her sister. And of course, comedy comes from there, but here they don't treat it like that. Here they treat it with like, oh no, sister's in over her head, but she's just doing enough to get by.
Yeah. I was just looking because I recognised her mother from something in the movie. She was in Zero Dark 30. I think that's where I know her from.
Oh, okay.
Her face. But I think all that stuff works really well. I think you have to know what it is going into it. I feel like if you see like the poster and think, oh, it's going to be some girl who goes around slaying giants, and you think it's just that, and it's going to be an action fantasy movie, I think that would maybe leave you feeling weird. But I think knowing that it's actually very representative and it's more of a drama with those elements included, I feel like it hits what it wants to do. It's a shame that this isn't getting more buzz. It's a shame that it doesn't seem highly rated in IMDb, but that could just be a lot of people who thought it was going to be an action fantasy movie and not what it is.
Well, and if you watch the trailer, because I hadn't seen the trailer till right before we decided to watch this, really. Like, I had skimmed it and I'm like, yeah, I'll watch this. But to sit down, because my wife wanted to see the trailer, and like sit with it, and right before we watched the movie, like, I don't get that vibe that it's an action movie. I get the vibe that you might see her fight a giant or two, but if the people went into that, I get that they might be disappointed because if there's based off but I mean, it's still a fantastic movie. Like, even if you went in expecting an action movie, Again, maybe I'm too close to this,
I mean,
but
no, I think that's just honestly why it maybe won't get the. It's one of those things where people who just wanted a light action thing will be disappointed that it's not what they wanted it to be. Not because
yeah,
they were the sort of people who were maybe never going to like this anyway, but I think for people who do
right,
like this kind of thing where it is more of a drama and it is got a bit more depth to it, because it's kind of a sweet story about someone accepting, and because it's unfortunate when this happens, and it does happen, but most of us, I think, don't have to deal with death in this way until we're a bit older.
yeah,
This is something that you're kind of unlucky if you have to deal with the death of a parent when you're a kid.
yeah,
That's why Batman exists, because it's tough.
yeah.
um,
No, that exactly.
so
I mean, and he's the archetype for that, and what it does.
and hell, I mean, think of Batman. I mean, a serious comparison here. Batman's whole thing is that he felt weak and couldn't protect his parents, so he spends his life making sure he can protect everyone else. That's
Right.
essentially what she does in her fantasy in this movie.
Yeah.
She fantasizes. So arguably, this one's more realistic because it's just in her head. So this is more like
Right.
this is what a kid in real
Well, yeah,
life
she's not
is more
dressing up
like.
as a bat and kicking down doors.
And they're both. This is the more emotional, realistic take. And again, I say realistic because it's all in her head. Batman's the no. What if you actually did become a badass and you did start
Yeah.
protecting people,
Yeah.
no matter what? So yeah,
Yeah. I want to argue with you, but I can't because it's all true.
that's a damn
Like
good comparison, Matt. And you know what?
it is. Like I'm searching my head for other superheroes, and none of them work as well as Batman. Because that is baked in. To who
Yeah,
he is.
I think especially because it's the whole idea that he was powerless to help. It's not like Spider-Man where he was kind of responsible and partly because she's
Yeah.
not responsible for her mother having cancer.
No.
This is a random act of fate essentially, and so that's why I think it's a bit more aligned to Batman's thing than that. But I do like the difference being that because it is like an illness, which is with Batman it's like. Okay, it's random, but it's an act of a human being. So he dedicates himself to stopping human beings. This is
Right.
more. I mean, obviously, an illness isn't magical, but it's like I think in her head, it's like a force that can't be understood. It's just something that randomly happens.
Right.
So she has to
Oh, yeah.
fight it with magic. She fights it in a fantasy land with giants because it's
Yeah.
mystical. So
Yeah. I agree with all that.
yeah. So no, I think there's a lot there, and I think there's so many scenes throughout that work really well. All the stuff with her and Sophia, and because you're kind of awkward at the start where Sophia's trying to introduce herself, and she's being nice to her, and Barbara runs off, and it feels kind of awkward. That it's like, but over the course of the movie, she's trying really hard to be her friend.
Hmm.
So there's a very sweet story at the center, on top of some of the fun visuals, and on top of all the other stuff. So I would highly recommend it, actually.
As would I.
Yeah, I think it's a really strong little story. I guess we'll get to ratings then, Matt. What are you feeling then?
Yeah, I'm thinking this. I know this might be a little high, but
Oh,
8.5, 8.5.
I mean,
So I really enjoyed it, and it hit really home. I'd said in our Facebook group this was a movie that spoke to my soul, and it's kind of what I needed at this point right now. So, all the flaws with it aren't enough to knock it or even bring up because it's hard to even think of any without calling them nitpicking. So,
yeah, for me there wasn't a whole lot in the way of flaws. I think if I'm going to try and play devil's advocate and try and like poke holes at it, I think maybe the like. I mean, maybe I'm trying to think how to phrase this. Like maybe like if there could have been more action, could have been more of the giant stuff. Like maybe it would have like been paced better. No, the pacing's fine though. Like
no, it says my one complaint that might be a nitpick is I would have liked to see more with the sister and seeing their relationship a little bit.
that's fair. I could have done more with the sister actually.
Yeah.
Arguably even more with the brother as well, because the
But
brother's only in a couple
yeah,
of scenes. He's just kind of this
he's in
antagonistic.
two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's just an antagonistic douchebag. Maybe a little bit more with them would have been nice. But
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe the offshoot there is that's part of concealing what's really going on, is that we don't get to see as much.
Yeah.
Because they're more likely to mention what's going on, because
Mm-hmm.
it's their mother too.
Yeah, and I get that, and with everything, but I just, I want to see how, how because she's not really an adult, but an older, person's dealing with that. But that would have spoiled the mom stuff too, So
And I think you
it's
get
one
some
of
good
these
senses
things.
that I love the scene where Saldana comes to the house to try and find her, and it Poots is there, and she like starts to break down because she's trying her best, she's trying really
Yeah,
hard, and I really like that scene a lot. Again, that's a scene where just the acting from her is kind of what sells
yeah,
the pain of it, and so um, yeah, honestly, not a whole lot to fault,
hmm
really. So. Uh, Yeah, honestly, I'm going to agree with the 8.5. I don't want to
no,
go
look
any.
at that.
I don't want to go any higher than that right now. I kind of want to rewatch it and see how it sits with me. Um,
Yeah,
I- on a repeat viewing when I've had some time to think about it. Um, it's funny because I think honestly the only critique that I can maybe think of that maybe fits, although in a weird way it's kind of the point of the movie, is just it's just a little bit sentimental at the end, but at the same time, it's
yeah,
like that's kind of the point when you get to the end. So I can't really fault it all that much.
oh,
Um, but hey, so no, I Kill Giants is very good. But
yeah,
I just want to say I love the scene where she actually says that, where cause she finally admits to Sophia what she
yeah,
does, and she's like, I find giants, I hunt giants, and the camera's tracking in, I
yeah. She's like,
kill giants. It's this tracking
yeah,
shot, this big epic moment, and I love it. I love that the movie treats her like what she sees and what she thinks she is as epic as she sees it as well. So
hmm
that's really cool. But yeah, so it's the story of a middle schooler dealing with the fact that her mother's dying and all the emotion that goes along with that, and everything's very representative of that. And I think it's a really enjoyable movie. Is that so? There you go. I Kill Giants.
yep.
Recommended from 1.21 gigawatts.
Highly recommended. It gets the 1.21 seal of approval.
Yeah. So that is I Kill Giants. Let us know what you think of the movie in the comments. If you want to support the channel, support the show, head over to patreon.com/mailfuzztv. I've been trying to do a little bit more of the Patreon plugging at the end, sell it a little bit. Obviously, you get to vote for a bunch of stuff at the $5 tier. You get to vote what me and Matt will watch on the month's Overload. That's always a vote. There's always a vote for Influx. There's always a vote for Screams After Midnight with me and Tim. So you can go check out that, of course, and look at all the things that are on offer over there if you want to. There's a link in the description, of course, if you want to go and have a look. Otherwise, like, subscribe, all the usual stuff. But that's us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching movies, and we'll see you next time.